Welcome to Baby Boomer Tales. My name's Jim. You can find us at babyboomertales.com. That is our webpage. We have a Facebook page, Baby Boomer Tales, our YouTube channel, and so much more. On our webpage are links to all that and more. I was sitting thinking, you know what I mean? Most of my best thinking happens when I'm sitting for some reason. It's not that I don't think when I'm doing stuff. I think a lot when I'm mowing. You're sitting there for hours on your riding mower, and the only thing you can really think about is, I need to mow this in a straight line. I need to turn left here and right there, and don't get too close to that sticker bush, stuff like that. But today I was thinking about my toenails. Here the other day I had a doctor's appointment, and so I thought I better clip my toenies, I call them. And so I got out this big clipper, the kind that, you push together and it clips fingernails and toenails, and the bigger ones for your toenails. And it's getting to be a harder and harder job as I get older. Last time I told my wife, maybe I need a mani-pedi. Manly pedi. I think it's Manny or Mandy or something, but I call it manly-pedi. And it made me wonder about people 200 years ago, maybe 250 years ago, our forefathers, or maybe people in biblical times. What did they do to clip those toenails? They did not have that big clipper that said Revlon on it that you just push together and it chops those suckers right in half, and then it has a little emery board type thing where you can smooth them out and stuff. They didn't have that back then. What did they do? They definitely didn't have manly petties. Well, I don't know. I was just thinking about that. What am I going to do when I get older? Who's going to clip my toenails? Something to look forward to, I guess. The other thing I was thinking about is socializing. I saw a post on Facebook, and it asked the question of older people, baby boomers, us, if they prefer to be around any people at all or not. And so many of them, I read maybe 20 or 25 comments on it, and most of them said no, they don't want to have anything to do with people. I worked around people all my life, I don't want to have anything to do with them. And my normal reaction is to kind of be alone. But I also understand that we need to socialize. We need each other. We need some friends. You don't want to be a crazy old hermit. Well, I've got my dog, or I've got my cat. That is not the same. That is not even close to being the same. I see in coffee shops little old men sitting around drinking coffee, and that's a good thing. I wish I had that, but I don't even hardly know anybody around where I live. I live clear out in the sticks, 10 minutes from town, and the town is a little bitty town I really don't know anybody there, or very few people, even though I've lived here almost 30 years. So I make my wife, she does it normally, naturally, and all that stuff usually. We have some friends, several sets of friends. And once a month, at least, we try to get together with a set of friends, at least once a month. Be better if it was more. I think I've been talking about this lately. I think it's important that we keep some sort of social figure, and so we don't turn into a hermit. Remember the movie Jeremiah Johnson with Robert Redford? Well, that's based off of a true story, and his name, which the Indians called him, was Liver-Eating Johnson. We don't want to be Liver-Eating Johnson. We want to be Jim. We want to be Kim. We want to be you, and we want to be you. So I'll get off my pedestal. I hope I don't fall. Yay! Don't pick your nose in public. Use the potty. A kiss is better than a spanking. These are some of the things that you learned when you were little. The title of today's podcast is Most of the Stuff I Know I Learned When I Was Little. Think about it. Most of this stuff that we know and we abide by in life, we learned before we were teenagers. Once you turn into a teenager, you all of a sudden think you know everything, and that predicament in your life gets worse until sometime in your early 20s, which then it seems to kind of subside and you realize that you don't know that much and there's a lot to learn in life. I'm going to go over a few of these though, like the nose picking, and maybe I'll throw in a few of my looks on it, interject my beliefs or my take on it. When you get a puppy, if you pattern him by love and affection and what no means, and no matter what, you're going to love that puppy turns into a pretty normal dog. Cats, that's a little harder, definitely. But kids, so many problems with kids that something happened to them when they're little, something not good, and it's harder to grow up how we would call normal. Now, I'm not saying that that's impossible because some of our finest individuals in this human condition we have started off on a very, very hard trip. But as you pattern a child, you teach him how to tie his shoes, for example. Now I wear slip-ons. You know what I mean? That you need to brush your teeth every day. And basically I brush my teeth the same way today as I was taught to do, as I did as a kid. I learned to ride a bike when I was little. I could ride a two-wheeler by the time I was probably 6 or 7, I imagine. Even though I don't ride bicycles today, those skills carried on to me driving, going fast down a road, having to negotiate a left turn or right turn or a car coming at me or whatever. Riding that bike taught me those skills. And driving a car, for me at least, was not a huge learning curve. I learned to be polite. My mother would always tell me, look me in the eyes. Now, the downside to this one is I learned how to lie. I learned how to look my mother in the eyes and lie. Your eyes are the window to your soul. Thank goodness I grew out of that. Look me in the eyes. Look someone in the eyes. Look them in the eyes when you meet them. Nothing's worse than meeting somebody and have them looking away. It always makes me wonder about that person. Look someone in the eyes. I learned how to obey. That is a life lesson you have to learn. You have to learn how to obey. Obey the speed limit. Obey the teacher. Obey the laws. You have to learn to obey. You have to learn to be careful. You have to be careful of the new puppy. You have to be careful of your baby sister. You don't want to hurt her. Be careful of that plate. Don't drop that plate. Don't throw that plate. The plate will break. Be careful of their feelings. Don't hurt somebody on purpose. I learned that when I was little. I also learned how to be honest. Be honest. What they say, honesty is the best policy. Be honest. My folks tried to teach me self-control. Jimmy, quit wiggling around. Jimmy, don't pick your nose in public. Don't pick your nose at all, especially in public. Jimmy, don't throw a fit. Jimmy, be in self-control. Listen, Jimmy. I learned how to listen. I learned creative thinking by putting puzzles together, by drawing pictures, by listening to a book that my mom was reading me at bedtime, and then interjecting maybe a different ending to Goldilocks. Creative thinking. Some more creative thinking is making up songs. I learned how to do my chores. Do you realize that I have been the trash man in my family since I can remember? Probably 6 or 7 years old, maybe earlier. I was taking out the trash. I remember burning the trash when I was 13, 14. As far as I can tell, and my brothers would probably correct me on this, I always did the trash. Nobody else ever had to do the trash. When I was single, I had to do the trash. because I lived by myself. When I lived with a bunch of people, I imagine the trash was a big old point of contention with people. I don't remember. Okay, then I got married, and I was taking out the trash. And then we had girls, not boys, and I still took out the trash. And I'm taking out the trash today. It is a life skill I learned when I was very, very young. I learned about hygiene, how you have to wash your hands, how you have to take a bath, how you have to scrub your neck when you're in the bathtub, all that stuff. I learned how to communicate, not only talking and the words I learned. I'm still learning words, okay? But if I wouldn't have learned words and how to use them and how they were used in sentence structure and stuff, where would I be today? I learned that boys are different than girls. I learned that at a very young age, very, very young. You have to treat girls different than you treat boys when you're a boy. I learned how to use a zipper and buttons. Imagine not knowing how to use a button. How to make food. And I'm not talking about canning and all that stuff, but how to make a sandwich, how to make a bowl of cereal. You know, if you only learned how to make a sandwich and a bowl of cereal, you'd survive this life. You would. But for me, that morphed into I'm a pretty good cook. Or at least I used to be. I've gotten pretty lazy. My wife's too good a cook. And as I've gotten older, I like grilling less and less. I can't figure that out, and neither can Kim. Why all of a sudden grilling's not that important to me. Oh well. I learned how to use a broom. I learned how to close a door, especially the fridge door. I learned how to answer a phone. Now, I know this has changed a lot than answering the phone that's on the wall and it's ringing, and you answer it with hello, or this is Jim's residence. You know, some people had to say that with their last name. Hello, this is Forky's residence. I don't know. But now you probably don't even say hello. Everything has the identity of the person that's calling you. I usually answer it like the other day. Hello, Jackie. What's going on? Jackie does my hay, and she was telling me how they were picking it up right then. I said something like, oh, I know, I've been watching you. She asked me if I got a count on them. And I said, yes, I did. Then she said something like, well, I'll see you after the second cutting. Thank you, Jackie. I learned to not hit. You know, little kids walk up and clock another little kid. Just hit them for no reason at all. I learned at an early age not to do that. And most of my childhood, if it wasn't my brothers, I wouldn't hit somebody unless I actually got in a fight with them. Then you have to hit or get hit. You know what I mean? I learned to say yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. No, sir, no, ma'am. I use those skills even today. Sign of respect. I learned my name, and I learned how to use my little voice. Not just a whisper either. I learned how to tell west from east, south from north. Now, my wife still struggles with this. The woman's in her 70s, and if I say, well, just look to the east, huh? To the left, darling, to the left. Oh, okay. I learned how to mow a lawn. Early on, I was mowing our lawn, and I even had a little business where I mowed Uncle Charlie's lawn. Learned how to mow a lawn. Henceforth, I learned how to take care of that lawnmower, how to check the oil on it. A life skill for after I grew and had cars, how to check the oil on the car. I learned how to take care of my stuff. Now, this is hard for a little kid. It is. It's hard to take care of your stuff. But you know, if you break something, especially if you're not trying to take care of it, you just flippantly bust it, you might not get a replacement. Mom and Dad saw you break that, and if they're really after you, they're not going to just replace it. What would that teach you? That you can break stuff and people will fix it for you. So how not to break stuff. Take care of your stuff. I learned about family, how important it is. My brothers and my sister, my grandparents and my cousins, my family, my mom and dad. I learned arithmetic. In fact, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Those three skills you have to know. I guess you don't have to. You don't have to know how to read, but your world would be a much shallower place without reading. Writing, if nothing else, you have to write your name anymore. You just sign it on a computer screen. I know that. Arithmetic, of those three, I think arithmetic has been the most important in my life. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I like numbers dearly. They are my friend. I like to play with them. Reading, writing, arithmetic. How to dress yourself. I'm a very fortunate man. As I've got older, my wife lets me dress myself and doesn't make me do it twice or 3 times anymore. How blessed am I? Well, I could go on, but I ran out of my one piece of paper that I put my outline on, and I probably run out of time here. Always be kind. I think we learned that when we were little. I'll be back next Wednesday. Thank you for riding along today. Peace out.